This is an SM Media production. Hi everyone and welcome to episode 2 of SM Media's Road to Cheltenham 2022. I'm Scotty Pike. It's an absolute pleasure to be your host as always. Delighted as always be joined by Calum McCluckin for the Scottish Daily Mail. Calum, how are we?
Yep, all good. How are you?
I'm all good, thank you. It's been the jump season is back. We're off and running. It's been a busy weekend. What's been kind of catching your eye this weekend?
Probably just the throwdown race at Down Royal. It was just kind of a genuine top class Grade 1, two or three, 4 horses, jumping second last together. And it's a terrific race. It's just a trademark Grade 1 3 mile steeplechase. It kind of gets the juices flowing for the rest of the season.
Yeah, it was a brilliant race. We'll touch on it a bit later on in more detail, but we're going to go straight into our fan questions. We got a few this week regarding obviously a few things to take note of. First question: what is your takeaway from Willie Mullins' stable tour from the Sporting Life? There's about 10 or 12 takeaways you can take away for that bit of detail. But I'll ask you, Calum, first. What was your takeaway for Willie Mullins' stable tour? What was the main one you thought was a big eye catcher?
In general, I think he's saving a lot over fences earlier than expected. Thought maybe keep 2 or 3 over hurdles, like Concertista. I would have liked to see Galvin Menil stay over hurdles, but it seems Echoes and Rain as well seems to be more kind of mare's hurdle than champion hurdle. But I think these stable tours, I think he's just thinking out loud as well. For instance, Dark Raven, I think was a good example of it. Sporting Life one, it was very we think it might be a stair, and the Racing Post, it could be any trip. So I do think trainers kind of don't really know until they've seen the track as well, but it's always good to have a rough idea what they're going to do. Like Concertista going off fences, I think was a bit of a surprise to me. I
thought that was the one that stuck out for me as well. Hot on Colour going over fences as well. That's one that's quite interesting. St Sam as well. I thought St Sam could be a potentially very well handicapped horse for a kind of hurdle at the festival. But again, there's a lot more to take into it. But as you say, with his novice hurdlers, he didn't mention 3 that I thought could be kind of big players. Dysart Dynamo, Champ Keeley and Edel Dion was another one. So it shows you the strength and depth he's got when he doesn't mention them. So it just shows you. But again, you see the strength and depth he has in the novice hurdle division in particular. It's so impressive, isn't it?
Yeah, everywhere. It's the last stable tour out, isn't it? Probably because it's got so many options, so many divisions. It seems that they're trying to do, and appreciate it with Kilcruit 82 miles, and Sir Gerhard might go up and trip. I'd be more inclined to take Sir Gerhard on in a Ballymore than Kilcruit and Supreme.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah,
from a standing start at the moment. He's got so many options, and I think he's just trying to figure it out like everyone else.
Yeah, definitely. He's going to be probably. We'll hope to see a couple of the kind of stars out in the next few weeks, but it's one to keep an eye on with Willie Mullins, just the amount of insane depth he has in kind of most divisions. Second question: how do you keep track of all your horses over the season? Do you use a diary to keep track of your progress? I'll give that to you because I don't really use a diary. I just kind of follow this.
Yeah, I just keep a tracker. I do the same for flat and jumps. See performance and see a race. Analyse it. I like putting my own figures on as well. Only really mainly for graded races. I use my own figures. For instance, I think Racing Post time form, stuff like that. I think they do give a bit inflated figures. In terms of Cheltenham, I'd probably give the Brits a little less than the official handicapper does. I think there are a lot of very poorly handicapped horses due to the nature of British racing. That I mean, you could have say a good novice turns into a chaser. Espar Romy, for example, take him in isolation. He's rated 160 now. At Carlisle, you would think, okay, he's rated 160, fiddling with low 150s. So Espar Romy's a class act. He's been handicapped in one run where he may or may not have beat Chantry House.
Yeah.
So therefore, anything that runs gives Espoir de Romy a race, is going to get whacked in the handicap as well. It's quite peculiar, but I think that's why Irish had a lot of success at Cheltenham, particularly in the handicaps, because they were so well in comparison to past horses. So I like to keep my own figures and keep my own notes, and racing post trackers are always quite useful for a horse that you think, that shaped quite well, it wasn't fit, and I quite like this horse to go to this race, and if it does, it alerts you, and you can back it or not back it accordingly.
Yeah, I think you're spot on there. I think that's the right way to go. Will anyone catch Brian Hughes in the UK Jump Racing Jockeys Championship? I don't think so. I think he's too far in front just now. I think he's somewhere 50 clear of Harry Cobden and Harry Skelton. That's the only two I really see contending with him, but he seems to have opened up a really commanding lead so far.
Yeah, Harry Skelton's probably the main rival, maybe down the line, when it really kicks off again, more and more. The Northern Circuit's very useful.
Mm-hmm.
Right, he's particularly in Donald McCain's yard. I don't think his main yard is right. It starts in flying form. Maybe it's a little less competitive up here, and there's less attention on it and focus. I think Musselburgh on Saturday, when everyone's watching Weatherby down Royal and Ascot, he's up there in Musselburgh, riding a 5-timer, stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly.
So I mean that makes a massive difference. He is the king of the north, and every time you go racing up the north, you kind of look out and who's Brian Hughes riding? Why? Mm-hmm. Because it's probably significant, and he's probably going to get a winner at least on any card.
Yeah, I think that's exactly why Brian Hughes is so far in front. I know, obviously, in Scotland is probably the main man. Just seems to be there all the time. But again, it's the right way to go into it. It's obviously he's doing it well. He's so far in front right now. It's going to be very difficult to catch him already. But again, it's something to keep an eye on. But for us, I think Brian Hughes is probably so far in front right now. Final question: are you glad to see Gordon Elliott back having winners, and does he deserve forgiveness? This is a tough one because obviously this is one we spoke about a lot. What's your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I mean, it's probably been done to death now. Yeah, he's back, so his win record is pretty good. Down Royal, I think he was 7 or 8.
Yeah, I think he's 7, yeah.
And he targets that quite successfully. He's made a mistake. He's owned up about it, and I think we can afford to forgive and forget. Not exactly forget. I mean, it's still going to run against him all the time. Particularly when he does come back to Cheltenham in a meeting like that. He's always going to be under the microscope, and he's got to. He has been punished, and as long as he learns from it, and as long as he's genuinely remorseful about it, then I'm happy enough to forgive him.
Yeah, I think that as well. I think it's just a case of it's going to be a kind of thing that's always going to live with him. I don't think he's going to be able to kind of live it down. But again, it's one of those things. It's kind of by with the kind of rules. The regulators have made their decision and things like that. And he's seen back, and a lot of kind of big stables have stuck with him, like the Morans, obviously JP and Gigginstown have still got horses with him. So again, it's probably just an unfortunate event that we're just kind of hopefully just kind of we don't see again, and obviously we don't kind of it just goes away. But again, it's one of those things. But we're good. That's our questions for this week. If you want to send a question in to myself or Calum, please send it in the comments below, and we'll read it out in next week's show. We are going to move on to quite an extensive recap. We're now at the stage where we're going to recap the horses that have caught our eye since we were last on air in April, and obviously there's quite a lot. Now obviously there's way too many horses to kind of do a date back, so we're going to do it in kind of race order for the races at the festival. So we'll start off with potential supreme contenders. We'll start off with my mate Mossy for Gavin Cromwell. Won a maiden at Punchestown by 8 lengths a few weeks ago. Beat a horse called Barbados for the Harringtons, who was kind of well thought of. Jumped really well into 16th for the Supreme. I was really taken by this performance. It was one of the first that really caught my eye in the Supreme division.
Yeah, good performance. Yeah, Gavin Cromwell's stable tend to be quite forward as well. At this stage in time, I was quite impressed by it. I think he's a bit short in the market now. You do wonder if there's others with flashier profiles that are open to further progress than that. He could be one to keep an eye on in a county hurdle potentially down the line if his mark is lenient enough.
Yeah, it was impressive, but again, as you say, it's maybe too short just now. I like to move it for Nigel Twiston-Davies was very, very good in the performance at Cheltenham, beating Tritonic and Stepney Causeway. 25 for the Supreme. He also won a novice hurdle at Worcester a few weeks before that. You really fancied this horse going into this race, didn't you? It was again, obviously beating Tritonic, who was really good as a juvenile last year. Stepney Causeway was good. Very, very good. And obviously beating the big boys is always a good advantage going into a season like that.
Yeah, race fit as well, bit of an edge, stable in form. He was targeted for it. Nigel Twiston-Davies compared him to, he's a bit kind of like the new one in stature. Again, I think he looks an ideal candidate for like a Betfair hurdle or something at Newry. Kind of like a Soaring Glory type. That can kind of go through the kind of rungs of the handicap first and then maybe have a pot shot at a grade 1 come spring. But he did it quite well. He was very professional. Yeah,
Tritonic as well. We mentioned for him. Is he kind of living up to what we feared it could be? Just a flash in the pan at Wincanton.
He ran okay. He got outpaced at a key moment, and then kind of plugged on and hung for a bit of pressure. It wasn't a bad performance. I'd expect him to come. I think he's going to be a trademark kind of tricky 4-year-old telling 5. He's going to be quite hard to place. I think he's 1-4-2 as well. So again, I think it's high, but. He could resume his progress. Still young, plenty of options. Maybe even revert to the flat as well later. As well.
Yeah, definitely. Saturday down Royal. Sorry, Mighty Potter was a good one for Gordon and Elliott. Won a maiden by 29 lengths into 20s for the Supreme. Looked impressive. Visually impressive. You can argue the form in behind, but visually looked really good.
Yeah, it was impressive. You know, he did what he's entitled to do in the market, 4-9 favourite. So I think people were kind of expecting that. Don't think it was the strongest race in the world, and hence the cut from 14s into kind of half the price doesn't really hold much appeal at this stage, I don't think. Yeah,
that's the kind of Supreme horses we've kind of looked at. There's not really anything else kind of caught with eye so far, but again, it's still really early days in that. On to the Arkle, third time lucky was a really impressive winner at Cheltenham. A really good jumping performance, into 12-1 for the Skeltons for that race. Likely the kind of avenue they would go down. He looks as if he's taking to fences really well. That was a good performance.
It was a natural. Jumped a lot better than, let's say, All Mankind at that point last year. Again, 140 rated operators in behind. Any News, for instance, jumped terribly. So again, there was not a lot of pressure, but the time was quite smart. It was a good performance. I think he was just below the top rung of good novice hurdle last year. So therefore, in the back of your mind, you're thinking about Arkle, you're thinking, well, it could be the same over fences, even though he's improved for a fence, because you'd still expect your best novice hurdles to still improve for a fence as well. So you'd imagine he's got a little bit to find, but the opening quote after the performance of 20s was more than fair. You'd be tempted at that. 12-1, not so much.
I know. 20-1 looked decent, but again, 12-1 just seems too short. Champion hurdle, a couple to mention who have kind of set the standard early on. Saudi obviously won the Galway hurdle really well, and then went on to win the Grade 3 at Tipperary that San Raw won last year. 33s, obviously he's got a lot to find, because we saw last year he just get outpaced and just didn't really keep up with the main contenders. But again, what do you kind of think is still a lot to find in that division?
I don't like it. I don't think he likes Cheltenham at all.
No.
He always past forms. Jesse hates the track, so I'm not really interested in him. I think I'm going to step him up the trip, maybe go 2.5 miles, maybe the Hatton's Grace, is what Willie Mullins is pointing at. But in terms of the Cheltenham Festival, I don't think he's a Cheltenham horse.
Nah, me neither. But again, obviously the kind of main Irish horse so far that's kind of won. Galway hurdle's obviously a big. Aramon obviously won that last year. We thought he was going to be a big player in the champion hurdle until he got injured. Zani here won well on Friday at Down Royal. Obviously was one of the best juveniles last year. Just again was unfortunate to triumph. 16s for the champion hurdle. Again, another horse that's probably going to need to step up if he wants to contend in that division.
Yeah, it's an interesting angle of 4 going 5. Proof it's trained on. Proof that his form towards the tail end of last season was kind of all wrong. That does make you wonder, though. You think, is he an autumn horse? Is he an autumn and winter horse rather than a spring horse? Which is worrying a bit about festivals. He also shapes as if he's a bit of a stayer. I wouldn't be surprised if they go up and trick with him. I think 2 miles is probably his bare minimum. I think you get quite badly outpaced in a champion hurdle. Maybe further down the line, maybe not this season, maybe the following season, he could be a stairs hurdle candidate.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, he looked last year, like a couple of runs he had before Cheltenham, he looked a machine. He won a fast-paced race and a slow-paced race. Won well. Didn't Castmate was only really contender to beat him. He beat him quite well. So again, probably will need to step up, but again, wouldn't be for me at the moment. Mare's Hurdle, there's only really kind of one horse, and she won really well on Saturday at Wetherby. Molly Ollie's Wishes for the Skeltons. Really good performance. Beat some good contenders like Miranda, Marie's Rocks, and Bella was in there. 10-1 now for the Mare's Hurdle. That's crazy short, isn't it?
Yeah, way too short, but it's just quite versatile. Reminds you of Roxanne in a way, how versatile she is, but she hasn't had a run at Cheltenham. She's ran quite often. She's never ran there. I just don't think it's going to be her main target. But being tactically versatile is really useful at Cheltenham Festival. Trip-wise, pace didn't bother her. Harry Sale just took the race with a scruff of the neck round the bend, kicked on, and it was a really good ride. And her rating suggests that she's a big player in the Mare's Hurdle, but again, what ran to form in behind? The second Miranda needed the run, stayed on. Marie's Rock is just not trained on, and her head carriage is still awkward. She was staying on, she needed more of a trip as well, and the rest in behind have ran no race at all. So I don't think she needed to run to say a mid 140, high 140 performance.
Yeah,
not on top of that, you need probably at least a stone of natural improvement to compete in a Mare's Hurdle. So I think she's plenty short enough, and she shaped that day like a bit of a flat track bully as well. And I'd be wondering if Cheltenham's her track, hence why she's not ran on it as well.
Yeah, we'll move on to the Ballymore. Nothing really to mention in the Ballymore that's caught our eye so far, but again, we could potentially change next week. Brown Advisory, Brave Man's Game, goes into joint favourite after a really good performance at Newton Abbott, beating the likes of Fusel Raffles in the big breakaway. Fusel Raffles obviously went on to win on Saturday. When it comes to a first round of jumping, I don't think you'll see anything more impressive, but what do you think? What was your overall thoughts for that performance?
Very good. Paul Nicholls always suspected that he would improve significantly for a fence. It's a very natural performance. I can see why he's been propelled up there near the top of the market. It sets a pretty useful standard already at novice level.
Yeah, I mean, he was very good as well. Obviously, big breakaway fell. Jumped really well. We always did think he would improve for a fence and perhaps improve for a step up and trip. But it's going to be, I think he's running on Saturday at the Future Stars.
He's getting entry.
So again, that could be one to keep an eye on. Again, it'll maybe be a shorter trip again, but we'll be keen to see what he's like when he goes up to kind of 3 miles. Obviously, I would imagine Kempton's probably the next plan for him. Obviously, that Cottle Star chase at Nicholls targets quite well.
Yeah, he looks like that kind of horse, doesn't he? Cheltenham's no negative for him either, so he looks quite versatile. He also looked like he strengthened up quite considerably as well on his debut. So no, I think there's a lot more to come from him. I can see why people are raving about it.
Yeah, he's into sixes, but we'll move into a race over the weekend. Lifetime Ambition beat Beacon Edge and Albert Bartlett winner Vanillier in a 2 mile 4 novices chase. Lifetime Ambitions for the Harringtons is into 25s. Beacon Edge have got about 20s for the Brown Advisory. Vanillier 14s. What was your overall takeaways for that race?
The winner won because it was the only one that liked the trip. Beacon Edge needed further, and Vanilla needed a lot further. The second and third are probably better kind of festival prospects in behind. What race would go to, I'm not too sure. Beacon Edge probably is a Brown Advisory horse. Vanilla, he could be National Hunt chase, the way he shaped, but yeah, I mean, it's probably a pipe opener for them. So I'd expect them to improve quite a bit, particularly Vanilla as well. I thought he shaped quite well. He just get badly outpaced towards the end.
Yeah, just get outpaced on the day. Lifetime Ambition looks as if he's quite good. I would maybe even say Marsh for him could potentially be again. That's interesting. Champion Chase, the first kind of clue we'll get is just after we record this. We're recording this on a Tuesday morning. We're going to have the Haldon Cold Cup later on at Exeter. Greenatine's entered in that. It's got an insane rating of 168. I would say if he wins that, he's potentially a bigger star than we thought he was. But what's your kind of thoughts on that race?
Grenadine's an interesting horse. He shaped quite well in the Champion Chase. I thought he was actually a bit unlucky. And out of the ones that are a bit of a price at 14-1, you kind of look at it and you think, well, he should be 20s or something. He should be 20 plus. But actually, you see the trainer, what he did with Politolog, how he should be improving with age a little bit. He is quite he's a bit of a fascinating contender. 168 does look a bit on the high side. Always achieved, but and he also shapes as if he can get 2.5 miles quite easily as well. No bad for in the champion chase with excess stamina.
Yeah, I'd be keen.
I think a stronger run champion chase than he got last year would have actually helped him.
Yeah, I'd be keen for Hitman in that race. In the race today, I was at £17 well in. I think he's probably sets the standard in that race. But that's going to be interesting. We'll talk about that obviously next week with the recap there. The bumper, there's a few horses to mention. First of all, Pink in the Park at 10-1 for the Mullins team. She looked really good. She looks as if she's a brilliant turn of foot. The only thing is she seems to be going towards kind of Leopardstown. I don't think they're maybe going to target the festival, but it's Willie Mullins in a bumper, that could change.
Yeah, it's kind of the mayor's bumper route, isn't it? I mean, there's a prestigious mayor's bumper at Leopardstown. I think it's one at the end of the season at Punchestown as well.
Yeah.
Aintree, so they might avoid the champion bumper altogether. Probably an interesting price as well, given that two Mullins horses that are quite prominent in champion bumper betting are going novice hurdling. So he probably has quite a few decent options available to him that we've probably not really heard about yet. Yeah,
there's still plenty to come of that, but Pink in the Park really stood out to me as a potential candidate for that if she goes there. Friday, the Mediator one really nice, looks a nice prospect, 16-1 for the bumper for Elliott. I thought it was good. I thought it was a good performance. Certainly not 3 times the price as a potential favourite should it be. I don't think there should be that big a gap.
No, I think Gordon Elliott will be quite keen to win this race, given the Sir Gerhard was kind of sold away from. I think in terms of bumpers, I think there's just ridiculous too much focus on bumpers. Flat racing, it's kind of about jumps, and a bumper horse right now, it's a bit too soon, too short for me.
The favourite now is American Mike, 5-1. It's as short as 5-1 in some places. That's ridiculously short. It was impressive enough. I mean, it didn't. Again, you can argue the form in behind as you can with a lot of these races, but that just seems crazy short to me in the beginning of November, 5-1 in some places.
Yeah, again, it's kind of the bumper line of Elliott won it with Sir Gerhard last year, so we think he's going to target a good one at it. Willie Mullins seems to have his anti-post best champion bumper horses seem to be going novice hurdling, so you can see why they've probably makers have taken a lot of drastic slashing to the price and stuff. But 5 and 6 is it's a bit short, particularly when you haven't really seen any real opposition against them yet. Yeah,
I know that's a market that's going to have plenty of twists and turns before March. On to the Marsh, a few to mention. Does he know a horse like Kim Bailey's has won 2 chases? Obviously beats the under through 5, who again runs today at Exeter. 33-1. We've always said if this horse was improved for a fence, he could be one to note for this season. He did look really good. He looked as if he improved for a fence.
Yeah, I think he needs a trip as well. I think he's a 3-miler.
Potentially,
It reminds me a lot about Happy Go Lucky. So, if he gets a lenient mark, I'd keep an eye on him for the Ultima, something like that. It's a kind of novice chaser that way. I mean, his main rival ran through the rails, so I think he was going to win anyways. But he is kind of he does remind me of Happy Go Lucky in terms of he's probably not quite a graded operator, which was evident in that really strong Ballymore last year in hurdle days. But it went wrong when he ran out at Newbury in the Channel hurdle. He's getting back to his old self, and he respects his fences a lot more than he does with his hurdles, and it's a bit like Happy Go Lucky did. And I just think he's a good, honest horse, and I think if you give him a decent mark, he's probably capable of winning something like an Ultima.
Yeah. On to Huntingdon on Sunday. Miller's Bank won a novice's chase there. Obviously, Kadzand fatally fell 2 out, so you can argue if he would have won or not. But again, Miller's Bank for Alex Hales. It's good to see Alex Hales have a horse like that. And it's kind of 25s. Looked a good jumper. Looked a really good jumping performance.
It was a solid performance. Terrible news about Kadzand.
Yeah.
You have to try and see him replicate it, do it again when properly challenged as well.
Yeah, again, it's kind of obviously sad news about Kazan, but Millersbank did look really good, a jumping performance. Cork on Sunday as well. Cape Gentlemen won the novices chase there, beat Runwell Fred, who we know could probably do with a step up in trip. He's one I'm really keen on for the National Hunt chase, but we'll maybe touch on that later on. Runwell Fred made a few mistakes, but Cape Gentlemen jumped well, won in a canter in the end up, didn't he?
Yeah, again, I think it's kind of gauging how fit some of these horses are in comparison to their rivals. Runwell Fred was second, but he was quite fit. He needed at least another mile, doesn't he?
Yeah.
He shapes. Cape Gentleman kind of just poached from the front, quite fit from a recent spin as well, and he's been campaigned as well over the summer on the flat, so you kind of expected that to happen. There was a few disappointments in behind, but you can only do what you can do at this stage of the season, and then try and kick on from there and see where the next target is. He's certainly a graded horse. I think he is an out 2.5 miler at this stage anyway.
Yeah, it looked good. It looked really good, Jim. I mean, Runwell Fred's one I'm keen to look at for the future, but Cape Gentleman did what he had to do. Ryanair, a couple to mention. Obviously, All Mankind won the Old Roan very well last week. Into 20s, probably the best he's jumped, to be honest. But again, we don't really know if this horse likes Cheltenham or not. Again, it's one of those ones we'll need to keep an eye on.
Yeah, and by all accounts, I don't think he's going to go back there. According to Dan Skelton,
yeah,
looks unlikely. He did it well. It was a very, very gutsy performance, holding on, clinging on up the running, and I expect him that his main target's going to be entry towards the end of the year for the 2.5 mile Melling chase. I think would be his.
Yeah, it's probably his plan. Yeah, but again, it's one to probably not really much else is going to run. Obviously, the Charlie Hall was an interesting one. I want to get your thoughts on. What was your thoughts overall? Shanblue, how far would they have won by?
I don't know, because he went out three from home. Was he going to tire? I mean, he treated 1.04, so he was inevitably going to win. If you just sit tight and hold, he'd probably just maintain the gap. So
it was a brilliant jumping display up until that third last one. It was so good.
It was very good. Just attack Surname, and once he heads Surname, he's beaten. So, and then take a look around and suggest that it's game over if you just pop the last 2 or 3 and it's done. But yeah, he would have won by about 15-20 lengths, you'd think.
Yeah, easily. Yeah, but obviously Dan Skelton put out a wee video today just saying they're going to take it easy the next couple of months and potentially target Cheltenham and Aintree. We won't likely see him over Christmas. I think they were planning King George. I think now obviously that's not going to happen. He's more of a Mars than a Gold Cup horse, I would think, Shanblue, isn't
he? Ryanair.
Ryanair, yeah, sorry, yeah.
You think you look... Again, I'm not convinced Cheltenham's his bag completely. And if he's going to run Ryanair, he likes to be run aggressively and prominently. I don't think Alec will allow that.
No.
So I'd be tempted to bypass Cheltenham. But he does what he does have is a ludicrously well in mark of 148.
Mm-hmm.
So in terms of Cheltenham, if you're not going to run him again until we see the Paddy Power plate, he would win, because 148 is obviously the borderline 160 horse. But because he fell 3 out, handicapper can't hike him up, even though he was shaping up to beat Surname, who you could say that he's ridiculously overrated. But he's going to get a good stone on top of his rating there if he'd won. And now he's not. Just 148 suggests that he can protect that mark. And if there is a little bit of a mark after his fall, then you could probably find a decent, valuable handicap, and a race it should probably win.
Yeah.
On good terms with.
Fusel Raffles obviously reaped to the rewards. He won for Nicky Henderson. Obviously was second in the Mars last year behind Chantry House. So he does do a lot of things right, Fusel Raffles. He's into 60s now for the Ryanair's, probably, I would say, where he would go if he's going back to the festival. But again, just did what he had to do in the end up. Obviously reaped the rewards of what happened beforehand.
Yeah, they finished quite tired as well in behind, which suggests that Shanblue was certainly not going to get caught. He just picked up the pieces, didn't he? He does
pretty much.
About him. I think Cheltenham suits him quite well. I think he'd also appreciate better ground. But a 3-mile trip round Cheltenham, I think he barely got it there, didn't he? So you'd be tempted to drop him back for a Ryanair, maybe. I think he's kind of in the Mr. Fisher mould of he's probably a grade 2 horse.
Really. Yeah, probably, yeah. Surname, what's next?
It looks like retirement, doesn't it? I mean, he kind of gurgles when he gets headed, and it was exactly the same thing that happened in the King George where he bombed out.
Just get outpaced, didn't he?
They've tried various wind options and trying to help him breathe, but he just seems to lose his head when he's surrounded by horses, and when he's headed, he's done for. Maybe the Altior race years ago at Ascot did bottom both them out a little bit.
I would say so, yeah. It's probably, he's not been the same since then. He's probably not going to be if we ever see him again, I don't think it's going to be in a Cheltenham Festival. But we'll move into the stairs. Obviously, Buzz is one that caught a lot of people's eye, obviously winning the Cesarewitz the way he did. 14-1 for the stairs. Nicky Henderson obviously saying that seems to be the kind of way they want to go. He'll need to step up. He's obviously done quite well in handicaps at kind of the past year, but it's going to be a big step up if that's where he wants to go.
Yeah, he shaped well in a grade 1 at Aintree, didn't he?
They finished second, yeah.
Suggested he can be a graded horse. The worry I would be is that Cesarewitz 2 mile 2, winning that does suggest he'll certainly get 3 miles on time. I'd like to see them try that before going to Cheltenham, because it's a really stiff 3 mile at Cheltenham. It's like grade 1 level. I think they're taking it gently with us. I think they'll gradually go up and trip with him, with that being the ultimate target. Given the fact that he doesn't really have a lot of graded experience, I think his price at the moment is a little bit short, but it's a different angle into a division that's never really seen as overly strong.
Yeah, no, there's not really a lot of depth to it, but Indefatigable won the West Yorkshire on Saturday. She's another versatile one. She could potentially go kind of mares, stairs, potentially handicap if she's still well in. The one I want to talk about is Paisley Park. Obviously, we know, a former stairs hurdle winner. Last year was third. I think I finished third, but he finished third again. Obviously, staying on, looked outpaced for a lot of the race. What do we think about Paisley Park? I know there was potential talk about going over fences. I think that was kind of not nipped in the bud relatively quickly, but stayed on, just always finds that flat spot, but it just seems to be too long now, the flat spot, and it just seems to be a horse with a bit more pace just gets the better of him.
Yeah, and he's 10 now, isn't he? So I mean, it's going to get harder and harder for him. In his defence, the race was completely unsuitable for him. They went no pace at all.
Yeah,
and that just doesn't suit him. And he was under the pump for a long, long way from home, and then he ran on towards the end. So there might be more optimism in it than first thought. I think he wants soft ground as well. It's drying out. He wants a bottomless slog to be seen to best effect. And a lot of good staying hurdle types do race behind the bridle a little bit. But his flat spot was prolonged. It was a long, long way out as well. He was niggled along, pushed along. He never travels well anyway, but you kind of expect the turbo to kick in, and it takes a little bit longer now, I think. And
yeah,
you can see it, but you can see him if he gets his conditions and if he gets a proper pace to him at. You can see him running a decent race at a stiffer track like Cheltenham if it's soft ground. So I wouldn't completely dismiss him.
No, not at all.
It's a race that throws up funny results and funny tactical scenarios. It's all about if he gets the right one on the day.
Yeah, definitely. But again, that's another one we're keen to see again. Mares Novice, just want to mention Imperious for the Elliott team. Won a novice hurdle at Listowel and then went on to bolt up in a grade 3 on Friday at Down Royal. 12-1 for the Mares Novice. She's probably the standout contender so far.
Yeah, LAS Bell of Dan Skelton's is probably quite good in terms of bumper form. Haven't seen her yet. We might see her quite soon. It was good. It's a good performance. I don't think there's a great deal of depth in either race, but she's done it quite well. She's quite forward, reliable, probably appreciates decent ground. And what Elliott normally does, particularly these down Royal contenders, is we'll race them quite quickly, give them a winter break, and then bring them back for Cheltenham. So I mean, it's already looking at Cheltenham's in mind already.
Yeah, I think so as well, yeah. We'll move into the Triumph. A couple to mention. The Moors have a horse called Porticello who won well at Wetherby. 14's now, again, you could argue the form of the race, but jumped well up until the kind of last, just got a bit kind of wandered with a loose horse, but probably the best British one we've seen so far.
Yeah, big, burly, ungainly horse. you'd think Cheltenham would actually suit him in that evidence. So weather was a bit flat, he kind of wandered around, and it's really wide as well. There's a lot of open space to wander about in. Logged. He's very unfurnished. I'd expect him to come on for that significantly, and if he, well, his engine is a bit Goshen-like, and the way he runs about and runs down hurdles suggests that he might be a bit Goshen-like as well in his approach. So he could be a monster. Who knows? His background French form is certainly very, very, very good. Magistrato of Paul Nicholls has come out and done something kind of similar. So you could probably suggest that it's a strong line of triumph, of potential triumph form anyway.
Yeah, definitely. The eye catcher on Saturday at Down Royal was field off for Gordon Elliott, into 10-1 favourite in some places. Jumped really well. That was one eye catcher to me, was how well he jumped. 16 lengths victory, very commanding. Went and drifted a wee bit, but just justified just how good he looks. Right favourite, look good.
Definitely. The same race Calixios won last year. You will not see many professional juveniles like that in a long, long time. It's so easy. And he would have wanted a better pace and probably better ground as well. Didn't bother him. Settled. Davy Russell asked him to quickened. Really, really polished performance. Okay, the time's ornery, the form in behind might be ornery, but the constitution of this horse at the age of 3 or 4 already is frightening. I think it was worryingly good. I think 12 is more than fair.
Yeah, I've seen 12s, I've seen 10s as well. There's a lot of
12s at Sky, but I mean, even after it was 14s, and I did think, yeah, I'm going to have some of that, because Calixios was underestimated because of his professionalism last year. I thought he was just professional. There was nothing flashy about him.
Yeah.
Zanahiyr, I think, had the more flashier, pacier pedigree, and probably the flashier form as well. But Phil Dorr was just the professionalism of the attitude, and that's what you want to see in juveniles. You know, in comparison to Porticello, for instance, it's like chalk and cheese, really. One like the finish article, one could develop into the finish article. Can he do that this season for a Cheltenham Festival? You'd rather back Phil Dorr at 12s and Porticello at 14s.
Yeah, probably, yeah. But we'll move into the Albert Barla. A couple to mention there. Bardenstown lad for John McConnell stayed on really well to win that race. Looked as if he was beat a long way out, but managed to get home. I justified a really big gamble on the day. It was obviously the Race Streets Adoyen won last year, who went on to finish third, I think, in the Bartlett last year. So there's that kind of eye-catching, kind of similar path that Bardenstown lads went down. Were you impressed?
Yeah, and you'd expect him to be kind of put away with that in mind later on in the season. He'd probably need decent ground. I'm not convinced it's going to get the Bartlett's going to be as weak as it was last season, potentially. And I'm not convinced he's as good as Streets of Dawn, because Streets of Dawn won that race last year at an absolute canter. Well, I made heavy weather of it a little bit. He's a bit lazy, races behind the bridle. You'd expect him to improve for it, have another run, maybe put him away, try and sharpen him up a bit. But he did. Classic kind of staying tight, looks beat but plugs on, and finds for pressure. So you're probably going to get an honest, good effort from him if you are a fan of him or not.
Yeah, he looked good. Looks as if he battled on, but again, it could be we'll probably maybe not see him to the festival. But again, it's one to keep an eye on. Hollow Games won a lot more impressively. Obviously, a horse you've mentioned before, 16-1. Obviously, won over 2 miles 6 at Down Royal. We knew last year this horse was potentially a good horse, but he did look really impressive the other day.
Yeah, he couldn't quite get him right last year. It just seemed to have these kind of little niggling setbacks for the Gordon Elliott team. He's just fulfilling a bit of potential now, I think. He certainly does look like a 3-miler on evidence.
Yeah.
Decent little maiden, I thought.
Yeah, he looked good. I was really taken by that performance again. Want to keep an eye on. Gold Cup, a few to mention. We'll start with Eclat de Rire, obviously won at 25, was impressive at Wexford. Henry de Bromhead has a lot of horses and potentially going for this race, but he could be a really outsider.
Yeah, he could be the dark horse novice that goes through the ranks, and he jumped really well. He jumped quite well at Cheltenham before a mistake.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
I think he'd probably have placed that day, given what happened in the race. was a good performance. He does have these novices, as we discussed last week with Gavin, Manila Indo and Apple. That race was the way they two ran. It was a mid 170s performance. So you're looking at Eklat Derriere to improve at least a stone to get into the mix. Could do times on his side, but yeah, it's a third option that Henry de Bromhead has. And if you're at Cheltenham, Rachel Blackmore is unlikely to be involved for any of his next races this season, because he's going to be bumping into Manilindo and Aplutari, I think.
Yeah, definitely. We'll touch on that race at Down Royal, obviously the Champion Chase. It was one of the best races we've seen in a long time. All four horses really caught the eye. That's very rare that happens. Obviously, Galvin won before in good fashion, but we'll start with Frodon. Obviously, won a Ryanair. We saw last year he just got outpaced in the Gold Cup, just couldn't go with the pace. But Frodon, he battled so well. That relationship with Bryony Frost is just so underrated.
Warrior like, was it? I mean,
yeah.
I'm happy that I backed him in the day. It was probably the only success in the day that I got. But when he swamped two out, you're thinking he's going to be tailed off fourth here.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Right, but fends them off, and when he gets his right conditions and the right tactical scenario, paints out. He's a very, very good horse. Cheltenham, the Gold Cup trip is too far from simple as that, and probably get taken on for leading a Ryanair. So a bit like Clandiobo in a way, just pick your moments, pick the right races, and you can get decent prizes from them outside Cheltenham. Good. King George will be next in the agenda.
King George will be next in the agenda. It's going to be very keen to see what happens there. Manilindo obviously won last year's Gold Cup. Again, just couldn't just battle Frodon in the day, but some of the jumps Manilindo had were so good. It just looked, there was a lot of time in the race. I thought, he is looking brilliant. And last year you could say he struggled a wee bit kind of this time of the year, but this, I think couldn't ask, apart from winning, he couldn't ask for a better start.
Yeah, he drifted before the off as well. He was a bit fat in the paddock, so they certainly let him a bit more to do in terms of fitness wise with him, and that's what happened. He jumped really well, and then he just tired out of it. I'd be very encouraged by his performance actually, because as you say, his jumping outside of Cheltenham, was a bit suspect.
Yeah, definitely.
That was a lot of improvement.
Yeah, definitely. Galvin's obviously won. I thought at the start of it, maybe last year, they're maybe going towards a Grand National, maybe even a step up, and obviously won the National Hunt Chase last year. I wouldn't have thought Gold Cup would be the target, but I think now it could be. If he's hung well with the likes of Manilindo and Frodon, he's potentially, this could be an option for him.
I think race fitness flattered him a bit. And I also think he'd probably like better ground, but he certainly showed that he's a grade 1 operator, you know what I mean? But you can go to Grand National off a big weight. Tiger Roll can do it, so can he. Many Clouds, for instance, you can get in the 160s and run it a national off a top weight. He just strikes me more of a kind of a Dower Stayer rather than a classy Gold Cup type. But I could see him running both. I could see him running the Gold Cup. A lot of horses have done that before.
Yeah, definitely. Gold
Cups and then let's have a tilt at the national. I think he's the constitution of a horse that wouldn't mind top weight as well either. Thought he was race fit in the day. He jumped quite well, and the ride that he got from a very good talented amateur that came in last minute in Jamie Codd over Davy Russell. He got a really good ride. It was uncomplicated, and he was kind of the last to make the challenge as well. It was kind of Manilindo came first, fending him off, and Delta Work came, and then Frodon just fended off Calum up the running.
I was actually encouraged with Delta Work as well. I thought he jumped a lot better than he's shown in the past year or so. Yeah,
Gordon Elliott was kind of right to pull rank there and say, because Jack Kent is really important to him. He's a horse that needs the rider to kind of make up his mind for him at events. And when they're in sync, they're quite good. And he always needs his first run in the season as well. So I'd expect him. Well, Gavin was race fit and ready for it. I would expect him to come on for it more than he would.
Yeah. Final race for the top of the Gold Cup. You'll see here I'm talking about Envoy Allen in the Gold Cup as opposed to Ryanair. That's maybe a debate we're going to have in a minute or so. When it came to, but obviously the race, second season novice chase at Down Royal, it was a perfect race to run him in just to get him back to fitness, see if the old spark was still there. Looked flashy, just looked brilliant, just visually just looked really impressive. It seems to be Ryanair's plan. I know that's probably a lot down to how much the Bromhead has in that race, but we couldn't ask for a better comeback for Envoy Allen, could we?
No, he looked magnificent as well in the pre-parade ring. I mean, if you look at just seen Manila Indo beforehand, you would have thought, well, Henry de Bromhead's horses seem to be leading the run a little bit. So you're kind of worried if there'd be a bit of condition left in Envoy Allen. Not the case. He looked stunning, looked fit, really fit, and his jumping was really sharp.
Mm-hmm.
No, the form in behind's no 200 win short.
That's always been the thing with him over fences. Always, you see his bumper form and his novice hurdle form. You could argue it's as good as a form as any horse we've seen in the past 10 years. Chase-wise, maybe not so much, but has that been down to maybe that a lot of trainers have been avoiding going up against him?
Yeah, I think there's a bit of fearful small fields against him last season. In terms of Cheltenham, I think the Ryanair is always move because he's not slow. He's got a bit of pace. You can try and see him slip streaming Allaho or something like that and dictating things.
I think if he's still with Gordon, though, I think that Gold Cup's definitely the plan.
Yeah, he was bought to be a Gold Cup horse, but he just looks too fast. A Gold Cup contender there would have won, but they may have looked a bit labour in the process. He's got too much speed at the moment. He could get it in time. He probably still could get it now, but in terms of potential, I would be. They might have a tilt of the King George or something with him. That might be a possible plan. And what I want to know about him is how well he travels over from Ireland to Britain, because twice he's kind of not seemed to enjoy it. So if you're going to Cheltenham, I would maybe be inclined to go to Kempton just to see how he takes it in. New yard, new stable, new surroundings. Try and get to know him a little bit better that way. But all he could do in the day was, win, prove his well-being was fine, and I think that chip joint seems to be put behind him. John Durkin, I think, might be next. Yeah,
seems to be. I think that John Durkin could be absolutely stacked with like Allaho going. I think they've mentioned a couple other horses that could potentially line up there. That could be a stacked race. But final horse, we're nearly there, Calum. We've got one more horse to mention in the Mare's Chase. Gin Online, 12-1 in now for that race. She won very impressively at Tipperary, beating the likes of Bustleton. Fancy Foundations obviously fell. She's been a difficult horse to keep right. We've known maybe in her juvenile season we thought she was going to be a lot better than she's shown, but she looks as if she's improved.
Yeah, just a thing of keeping her sound, isn't it? Rob Pure's got quite a lot of ammunition.
Mm-hmm.
The Mare's Chase does look an obvious.
Yeah.
I think you'd just like to see her string a couple of these kind of performances together first before diving in for a long-term target.
Yeah, definitely. And that has been our rather long recap. We'll take a look at what's coming up this week. Obviously, there's a lot of action this week. We've got 2 races at Wincanton, the Elite Hurdle and the Rising Stars. We're going to actually have the column on Saturday morning where we'll take a look at it in more depth. Anything really you catching your eye? Goshen obviously comes back to the Elite Hurdle and Braveman's Games and the Rising Stars. Are they 2 that would probably look rock solid right now?
Probably. The Rising Stars usually quite a good race. The Elite Hurdle as well. They're both quite nice. I would just prefer to wait and see what the final declarations are before diving in. But the one I like the Grand Sefton for quite a while, Senior Citizen.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't get home over the entry fences last time. We dropped back and trip. He likes the track. Alan King's horses are doing quite well. I think he'd be interesting if he takes that up. He's probably the only one that I've really kind of earmarked for the weekend at the moment.
Yeah, I think it's we'll definitely have more detail on that in the next few days. But we'll move on to kicking off our main event, the ante-post picks. Let's get our portfolio started. We've got 1 pick each to kick off this week. You want to go first or will I go first? What race is yours in? So we will not get the same one.
Mare's Novices Hurdle.
Mare's Novices Hurdle. I've got one in the Ballymore. So you go first. Mare's Novices Hurdle. What have you got?
It's Belle Metal
Okay.
At 16-1 for Willie Mullins. I just think this horse is probably going to be earmarked for the Mare's Novices Hurdle. I think Willie Mullins wants to win it again. He dominated it for years in its inception, and I think he wants it back. Kenny Alexander's the owner. I just think that combination seems to be destined for for some success. Expect her to win an easy maiden quite soon. I just think she'll be top rank. Expect to be pretty good. Her bumper form visually was very impressive. And it's just a connection thing. I think the Mullins-Alexander combination seems to work quite well in these type of races. So I think 16 is just about fair enough to get the ball rolling.
Brilliant. I have got one in the Ballymore, and I'm kind of going over new old territory here, but I'm starting the way I started last year. I'm going with Journey with Me. 14-1 I've got for the Ballymore. So same profile as Bob Ollinger. Looked more impressive than Bob Ollinger in its bumper. The exact same bumper at Gowden Park. So again, just really excites me. Just the same profile. Hopefully see him soon in the next couple of weeks. I'm really, really keen to get off to a flyer. Journey with Me, 14-1 for the Ballymore.
It's fair enough to me, yeah. You can see the thinking behind that. I'd probably say Ballymore's is going to be his trip as well, you'd imagine.
Yeah, that seems to be the plan. But again, that's our anti-post picks off to a flying start. That will do us for this week's episode of SM Media's Road to Cheltenham 2022. I want to thank Calum for coming on. It's been an absolute pleasure as always.
Yep, brilliant stuff.
Brilliant. Obviously, keep an eye on what's coming up on the channel. Obviously, we're going to have our column on Saturday. You've got your racing diary on the Scottish Daily Mail on Sunday. It's a Sunday morning, isn't it?
Yeah, normally every Sunday. Sometimes take a break when I'm on holiday, like today.
Very good. But keep an eye on that. Obviously, if you're a Scottish Daily Mail reader, and we'll post links and things like that for that. Please stay tuned to our podcast and YouTube channels for more Road to Cheltenham content in the next few months, and follow us on social media. Thank you very much, everyone. We'll see you soon. Cheers.